Hi, Maria Mandarino here today, talking about the Enneagram and spiritual direction, a little bit of astrology. We're going to kind of casually blend some of these ideas together today, and I do mean casually. I have some very roughly printed out notes that I'm working off of today. So, thank you for being here. If you haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you would support the channel by clicking that subscribe button. It really makes a difference to the success of the channel and the work that I do here, helping me reach more people. So, if you could do that for me, I would greatly appreciate it. Please remember to also like, comment, subscribe, and share the episodes. Those all really matter. They seem like little things for people to do, but they really do matter for this channel. So if you value this content and the work that I'm doing here, I would appreciate it if you would do that for me. So today I want to talk about a couple of transits that are happening right now. And one is the lunar eclipse that's happening this week, and that's going to be in Virgo. So high emotionality, right? Lunar eclipse, and I think of that energy with Virgo as being the overwhelming emotions of the things that we want to get done, the housekeeping things in our lives that we want to get done. So consider that, consider where that might be playing out in your life right now. Um, by the end of the week, Mercury is going to be going retrograde, right? So Mercury is Virgo's planet, right? So we're going to have this mercurial kind of Virgo energy leading into this, and then the end of the week with the energy of Mercury going retrograde. A little bit of a pulling back on that energy and this emotionality that might be about wanting to move things forward, get things done, be organized, have all the pencils sharpened in the pencil holder kind of energy. And then all of a sudden that energy is not as readily available by the end of the week. So my question to you, and this is how I work as a spiritual director, my question to you is, how is this playing out within your Enneagram type structure? Okay, because we can just look at the astrology of it, and sometime we may, but usually I look at transits in the context of your Enneagram type. So, either the lower side of type may emerge, depending on what your type is, or you may see shadow behavior emerging. So, depending on how well you know your Enneagram, will determine how well you can answer those questions for yourself. Um, so, Mercury is this go-between planet too, this go-between energy of being, the messenger between the heavens and below the earth, right? So being able to go between worlds. Um, so um, so there's some of that going on as well. Like, how well do you feel that you're able to move between your own worlds right now within your Enneagram, right? And this may be a foreign concept to some of you. So what I want to do with this, to take it a little deeper today, is talk about ancestral trauma in this context of how we're responding to this energy, what emotional buttons are easily pushed right now that are Virgo-like in our lives, and where that might tap into the ancestral patterns in your world. So working with ancestral trauma um, heals you, heals those who will come after you, and energetically heals what has come before you. Okay. And these are concepts I work with, certainly in spiritual direction for sure. I'm also an acupuncturist. If you've been watching this channel a while, you know that. And I work with ancestral trauma in my acupuncture practice as well. So these are ideas that flow in and out of the work that I do, and have to do with lineage. So, and again, being an acupuncturist, my work is lineage based. And it's my belief that lineage is what empowers you. And now when I'm referring to lineage, I mean your personal lineage, your ancestral lineage, has the opportunity to empower you. We think of, our ancestral history and trauma as the negative things, the things that we want to work through and shed off. And that's really not, I believe that's really not where the work, the deepest, most meaningful work happens. I think it's where we're willing to enter into those dark hallways and um, and find the empowerment in those dark hallways in our lineage, in our ancestral history. Um, and um, and where do we look in our Enneagram to begin to pull these threads? And I don't know that there's one answer. When I work with people, it's kind of the thread that we pull. It's what's coming up, what might feel a little frayed in your life right now, like fabric that's frayed, right? So what feels a little more exposed and a little weary and a little worn out. Where are those spots for you in your life that may tie into your ancestral history? How do your buttons relate to the buttons of the people who have gone before you? Because we all have buttons, okay? So I've been working with people, and I did this in the last episode as well, with a different sacred prayer. But I've been working with this book with the people that I meet with, like my clients that I do spiritual direction with. It is the Interfaith Prayer Book by Ted Brownstein, compiled by Ted Brownstein. Little tiny book, not very big. But has prayers and passages from various traditions. And I've been spending a lot of time with the Shinto tradition with people. Um, and in the Shinto tradition, they talk about the kami, which is the spirits of the ancestors. So that word appears in here. And this is a prayer called Sacred Words. The sacred liturgy shall be recited solemnly in a great majestic ritual, beseeching the kami, the ancestors, to restore the order of nature. When these sacred words are pronounced, the kami of heaven will push open the heavenly gate. Heaven's eightfold clouds will part, and the kami shall lend ear to the sacred words. The kami of the earth shall climb to the tops of the high mountains, to the tops of the low mountains, dividing and sweeping away the mists of the mountains, restoring clarity. So what I love about that prayer has to do with how engaged we are with our own kami, with our own ancestors, right? With our own lineage, especially when things seem hard. And that brings us back to this, lunar eclipse, right? So eclipses tend to be kind of a fraught energy, right? So as these buttons that we have get pushed, right, and sometimes not pushed in the best directions, right? We've got this retrograde coming up and this just disjointed kind of feeling to the energy. We're emotional, wanting to move forward, and now we really can't because Mercury is not really able to access that forward moving energy, right? But we have the kami, we have the ancestors, and we know our Enneagram, right? So we have enormous tools with what I just said, just right there. Um, yeah, the energy is a little rough. Astrology is like the weather, right? Some days we have beautiful, bright, sunny days, and if you say, I have a skylight over me here, and you'll see the light changing. It's not artificial light happening here; it's sunlight. So the weather changes, right? And some days are sunny, and some days are rainy and cold and miserable and damp and windy and whatever else, right? And the astrology is like that, so it changes. Right? Sometimes it changes and it's more challenging. Sometimes it's easier and there's more flow. It doesn't mean one's better than the other. It just means it is what it is, right? But how connected how connected are we to the energies, to the ancestors who have gone before us, who are engaged with this. And as the prayer says, the kami shall lend an ear to the sacred words, to the prayers, right? The kami of the earth shall climb to the tops of the high mountains, to the tops of the low mountains, dividing and sweeping away the mists of the mountains, restoring clarity, right? So they're there to engage with us, right? I had gone to years ago a labyrinth walk that was out in Hampton Bays on Long Island, not far from where I used to live, and we did a moonlight labyrinth walk, and was at a convent. And one of the sisters had said that the ancestors were no further than the tips of our fingers that we could stretch to. So my question is, do you look at the world that way? Do you think of the world that way particularly when you're in a state of high emotionality and maybe the astrological weather is challenging you or whatever is challenging you, right? I tend to think it's the astrology is always in that in one way or another. We may not know it, but usually is. So how are you interacting with what has gone before you? And where are you stepping out of your Enneagram with it? What expression, what face of your Enneagram, what piece of your Enneagram, what expression, what wing, what line, the higher self, the shadow self, where you where you stepping out of the dynamic energy of the Enneagram with the ancestor energy. So that's kind of where I'm going here right now. So is it your shadow? Is it your stress point? Are these the places where you step out when you're challenged by, let's say the astrological weather? I'm just going to use that as a phrase. So these would point to unhealthy responses that may or may not fully be yours. That's the other piece of it. So that's where the ancestral healing matters because I believe, and I don't know in the Shinto system, technically what's correct here. But my view of the ancestors is we have the ancestors who have progressed, and we have the ancestors who have maybe not progressed as well because they haven't done, we all leave this earth at different levels of having done our work, right? And it's my belief we continue to do that work on the other side. Um, but so in this life, in your Enneagram now, how do you step out? What kind of behavior? Is it healthy behavior? Is it coming from your stress point? Is it coming from your shadow self? And is it yours? Is it really yours? Or are these things that you're carrying from your lineage? Now, whether you've heard them in your childhood, whether you've heard them from people who heard it in their childhood, right? Is this the ancestral, unhealed ancestral energy that's gone before you that is speaking through you? Because that can happen when we're not aware, when we have not done ancestral work. That's why I do this work in both fields of practice that I have. So it's kind of like tapes that play in your head. So which tapes are playing and who popped them into, I'm going to be dating myself very shortly. Who popped them into your cassette player? So yeah, I'm that old. Um, so who installed those tapes? Okay. Um, so we all have, so here's where the Enneagram I see sometimes the Enneagram is like a skein of yarn, and how can we just loosen up the yarn and pull the skein apart, right? So we think of the inner critic as only belonging to the Enneagram 1. I don't believe that. Okay. I believe the loudest and perhaps most brutal inner critic in the Enneagram belongs to the 1, to the unhealthy 1. But I think we all have an inner critic. It's just a question of how loud is it on a megaphone, how brutal, how often do we hear it? But I think we all have an inner critic. So I'd love to hear that. If you have thoughts on that, share them in the comments, please. And I'm going to just give you an example of a non-Enneagram 1 inner critic voice or tape, as I said before. So the six, using a six as an example, would be if you're not careful right now, you're going to get hurt. Right? That's how a six's inner critic would speak. Little different from what the one would sound like. It would be more like you're not good enough. You shouldn't have screwed that up. Um, you should have known better. Um, so yeah, but if you're not careful, it's like it's more active also. If you're not careful, because what are sixes about, right? Planning, making sure you're secure, making sure you're safe, making sure the people that you love and care for are safe and provided for, right? So it's all about safety and caution. So if you're not careful, there's your six word, you're going to get hurt. Okay, because it's dangerous to not be careful in the six world, in that lower six, shadow six expression, right? But it can still come out as an inner critic. And that inner critic, my belief and experience in working with people is that inner critic somehow, each of the nine types, different inner critic, not the one inner critic, but everybody, like I said, everybody's got one. Okay. Typically has a thread that goes back through our ancestry somehow, somewhere. And it gets back to this idea of let's loosen up the skein and let's pull a thread and let's see what's at the end of that thread. Okay. And that's the work of spiritual direction. Okay. And that's where we start to like I said, pull out that yarn and just loosen up the whole skein. I knit and crochet, so yarn is one of my favorite metaphors. But if you've ever taken one of those jumbo, and sometimes you'll get these big knots in those jumbo skeins. If you do yarn work, you'll know what I'm talking about. Sometimes it'll just be this knotted clump of yarn that comes out, and the only thing that you can do is either loosen it up until you get that knot loosened up, or you can cut it, right? Don't do that. One of the most important teachers, mentor in my life as an acupuncturist, before I became an acupuncturist, I was actually a patient, had talked about he was studying in China with his master, and they would leave their windows open in China, and in order for the cats to not get out of the house, they would have the cat on a leash, and there was a pole that the leash was attached to in the house, and the cat wound itself around the pole. And so I should give you a little backstory about acupuncture here. So if you're not familiar with how acupuncture works, we look at the root cause. We don't treat the symptom. We treat why you have the symptom, and that's what lets the symptom go away, right? So that piece of backstory is important. Um, so when they came home, they found the cat really wound up around this pole, and he was choking himself from the collar, and he didn't have any more room on the leash. And the my acupuncturist's immediate response was, "Let me get a knife and cut the leash so the cat would not suffocate." And the teacher got in between him and the cat and picked up the cat and wound him back around that pole and just unwound the leash. And he said to me that he understood the lesson there was, it was not about the cat. The lesson there was about how to treat your patients, which in essence is it's another metaphor for how to live our lives. Um, you don't just cut out the knot. You don't just cut out the problem. You unwind it. You unwind it to get to the center of the problem. Because if we cut it, we cut out a whole chunk of our ancestral lineage. And that's, I'm going back to that first metaphor now, treating through the ancestral lineage, right? We don't want to cut that out. I mean, it may seem like the easy thing to do, but then what? Right? I mean, then what? Then you have two pieces that don't even connect anymore. There's no how do you make sense of what's here, what's there, and this middle piece that's now missing from our being, from our consciousness, from everything that will come after us. Breaking that link, cutting that cord is not necessarily, and I know that's a different metaphor of cutting the cord, and there's sometimes we do talk about that type of thing in spiritual direction as well. Where do you end one link and create a new one? But I still don't think you can do that without acknowledging the knot that's in the middle, without understanding the knot that's in the middle. Um, so, um, so I want to leave you with that idea to play with within your Enneagram, within how your unique inner critic speaks, out of whichever of the 9 types you express your being, your nature with. And then I want to ask you about your higher self, perhaps your security point that you go to when you do want to attain a particular goal. And I want you to consider, and I see this as fire, the flame in your lineage that feeds that feeds your ability to go to your security point, your security type within the Enneagram when you want to achieve a goal and you become this person that's driven to meet that goal. Which type is that in the Enneagram for you, right? And where in your lineage, where in your ancestry, where is the spark, where is the flame that feeds that fire in you that makes you go to that place in your Enneagram? Or the fire in your lineage that allows your higher self to express itself in its fullest. So a little esoteric today, maybe. I hope I didn't reach too high above your heads, because I know I talked about some more complex ideas today and threw a lot together. But this is how I work. This is unique to how I use these tools, these ancient wisdom systems of the Enneagram, astrology, and spiritual direction, which is another wisdom system tradition. Um, so yeah, how do you do that? How do you work with the ancestors? How do you meet them? Do you meet with them? Do you leave space in your world? Do you allow the silence in your life? Do you give yourself the gaps to let them move so the clouds can part off of those mountaintops and clarity can come in, right? Um, are you doing that? If you're not, this would be a spectacular time to do it at this eclipse. It'd be absolutely spectacular. If you meditate, bring in your meditation skills. If you don't meditate, um, there are many systems and traditions out there you can explore. I'd be happy to work with you in that. That's something I actually do with the people that I meet with in spiritual directions. That's something else you can reach out to me about. My links will be in the show notes. You can find me on all the social media platforms. I'll have those links in there, the website, and you can schedule a free half-hour discovery call to kind of talk to me about what your goals are and whether or not I'd be a good fit for you with spiritual direction, doing Enneagram work and astrology. I have a couple of different ways I work with people. I do have straight up spiritual direction where we bring in the Enneagram if that's something that you want to bring in, or we can do spiritual direction without that. Certainly, there are other ways to do spiritual direction. And I also have another type of session where it's a hybrid, and it's more of a monthly, well, they're all monthly meetings basically, but this is a membership where we do some astrology with Enneagram with spiritual direction every month. That's a 90-minute session as opposed to the 75-minute more traditional spiritual direction. So a couple of options there that we can talk about. Schedule a discovery call. I'd be happy to explain how I work with you. And thanks again for being here. Please remember to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share. And thanks for being here. Love to hear what you think about this. Okay, thanks so much. Have a great week. Bye.